Do I schedule my tetanus shot now? Or should I wait till my blood turns black?
Dad huffs a laugh, his old binoculars pressed against his eye sockets. I have no idea how he can see anything through those things. One lens is cracked as hell, but maybe he's been eating his carrots in lockup, because he drops the binoculars into his lap with a satisfied nod.
Lights out.
It's a weird thing to say, because the sun is blazing overhead, so hot I feel sweat dripping down the back of my neck. We've been sitting in my van since 4 a.m., parked in a stand of trees off a 2-lane highway somewhere in eastern Illinois, safely out of sight of the decaying barn a ways down the road, but close enough to keep an eye on the mountains of rusting car bodies that litter in the grass. On first glance, the place looks like any other rundown property out in the boonies. This part of the state is riddled with them, sprawling acres of land that nobody gives enough of shit about to maintain. But this particular shithole features a warehouse with boarded up windows and wide double doors, a generator large enough to run all of Hawkins, and a stockpile of power tools that would make Uncle Wayne salivate. All the telltale signs of a chop shop. And chop shops run at night, which means that right about now, as the clock ticks toward 11, the upstanding members of society who run the place should be all tuckered out and ready for bed.
You ready?
Dad asks. The honest answer is no. I'm not ready to rob a chop shop. But then I think about the demo tape that's currently on its way in a padded envelope to some windowed, spotless office building on Sunset Boulevard. The sun probably doesn't feel so harsh in California. Yup, I say. And I follow Dad out of the van and through the trees along the side of the road. I thought he was joking the first time he'd mentioned this plan. I'm starting to realize that I have that reaction a lot when Dad tells me something, and that unless there's a priest, a rabbi, and a sailor involved, he very rarely is.
We need a tow truck.
He'd said, as we rummaged through the shelves at the war zone, piling spike strips and coveralls into an oversized shopping cart. A big one. I figured that meant we'd be paying another visit to Reefer Rick or another one of Dad's associates. Since his buddies came in every favor of crooked on the face of the earth, oversized tow truck guy didn't seem like too big of a buy. Put another point in the idiot column, I think, trudging along behind Dad. My dreams of tow truck guy had imploded pretty spectacularly the second Dad said that for this errand, we'd be crossing state lines. That's a pretty shady way to start things off, I'd said, loading a pair of pliers into the shopping cart. But he just grinned at me.
It's cooler in the shade, kid.
The issue was, he'd explained, that tow trucks are hard to come by unless you have a wad of cash burning a hole in your pocket. And even then, the authorities will take notice. Jacking one from a reputable mechanic isn't a much better solution, especially if you're trying to fly under the radar the way we are. No, there's only one type of person guaranteed not to call the cops on a thief. Other thieves.
And it just do happens.
Dad had said as we pushed our purchases across the parking lot toward my waiting van.
I've got a line of chop shop in Illinois that has exactly what we're looking for.
We emerged from the trees right on the property line. Dad has his eyes fixed on the warehouse's padlocked barn doors. But I'm more preoccupied with the dingy trailer rusting into the grass a dozen yards away. This is where the two figures, one man, one woman, both in grease-stained coveralls, has disappeared once the sparks and grinding in the warehouse had paused for the night. It's only been about 40 minutes since they slammed the door shut behind them. but I can already hear their snores filtering through the cracked windows. They're sacked out. Let's just hope they stay that way. Dad smacks my shoulder to get my attention. Then he's trotting across the grass toward the warehouse. A beer can crunches under his boot, and the tall weeds are shushing loudly at the legs of his jeans. But there's no falter from the snores in the trailer, and so I follow, keeping a step or two behind him until he stops in front of the padlock on the warehouse doors. From one of the bottomless pockets of his leather jacket, Dad produces a couple long strips of metal. I keep one nervous eye on the distant trailer as he slips the picks into the padlock and gives them one twist, and then another. And then the lock is clicking open, unlatching, in the space of a breath. How are you so good at that? I mutter.
Guitar picks, lock picks.
He waves his hands and the picks disappear. Munson magic.
You figure out one, you figure out the other.
That's bullshit.
Things can be bullshit and true at the same time.
It takes both of us to open the warehouse doors. This time, Dad is careful to be quiet, moving slowly and oiling hinges so that no wayward creak of metal gives us away. By the time we step into the dusty barn prop, the door's closed with a brick. The drops of sweat running down my neck have transformed into a river, and my t-shirt is soaked beneath my arms. I'm a mess. And Dad looks fresh as a daisy. He's got a crooked grin on his face. And there's an unsettling moment where I realize I've seen it before. On myself, in the mirror, when I've just come off stage at the Hideout, or finished running a crazy session at Hellfire. It's a smile with an edge, with a bit of twisted heat.
You bring a light for a reason?
Dad asks me.
Or is it just a pretty accessory?
I roll my eyes and click the flashlight on. The beam cuts a dusty swath through the warehouse gloom, illuminating stacks of skeletal car carcasses, piled 3 or 4 high. Workbench jut at odd angles. The only clear route through this chaos is a path about 6 feet wide, just large enough for a truck.
Here,
Dad says. Sure enough, the waving beam of my flashlight has landed on a fragment of what can only be the tow truck's hulking frame, and Dad trots around the driver's side to peer in the window.
check the wheels.
He orders over his shoulder. I give him a mock salute. Yes, sir.
Don't be a punk. This is educational.
I could argue, but this doesn't feel like the place for it. Instead, I drop into a crouch, shining my flashlight into the wheel wells to search for the metallic glint of keys. No luck. The wheels are bare. But Dad just snorts and snatches up a discarded car antenna.
Munsons don't wait on luck.
He says.
We make our own.
He shoves the antenna down into the window, and after a few seconds of jimmying, the door's lock popping open, just as smoothly as the padlock on the warehouse door. That a guitar pick thing, too? I ask.
That's intermediary.
Dad wrenches the truck door open.
Come here. I want to see if you can jump all the way to advanced.
He slides up onto the bench seat.
We're not swimming in time, kid.
He says when I hesitate. I resist the urge to stick my tongue out and climb up next to him.
All right.
He says. Using a screwdriver, he pries open the plastic panel beneath the steering column. It lands across my knees, and I shove it aside.
Start her up.
The bottom drops out of my stomach. Dad, I can't.
Sure you can. We've been over this. Or are you telling me you don't remember?
Of course I remember. It had been my 10th birthday present from Dad. Car boosting lessons. I hadn't needed to ask around at school to know that this wasn't a widespread coming-of-age tradition. One day, you're gonna need a set of wheels, Dad had told me, his eyes solemn. I'd taken this as gospel at the time. Of course I'd need a car. Everyone needed a car. It hadn't occurred to me until later that not everyone got a car by stealing someone else's. Silly me, I guess I forgot to practice. I try to laugh through the heavy boulder sinking in my gut. How ever will I get to Carnegie Hall?
I ain't joking, Eddie.
Dad says.
I don't work with guys who don't pull their weight. You want a cut of this job? You're gonna help out. So I'll say it again. Start her up.
He shoves a pocket knife into my hand.
Notice how that wasn't a question.
I gritted my teeth against a bitter retort. And then I reached down and extract 2 red wires from the bundle dangling below the steering column. These'll jumpstart the battery. I hear my dad's voice, echoing back from that sunny morning, 8 years ago. I'd watched him strip the ends with a flourish and twist them together. That's what I do now, flicking open the knife with my thumbnail and connecting the red wires.
Good.
Dad's approval washes through me. I wish it didn't feel as good as it does. Ignition first. It's yellow wire, easy enough to pinpoint. I tease it out of the snarl and twist it in with the battery wires. My stomach twists right along the tangle in my hands, and I realize that the thing it's rebelling against is disgust. I'm disgusted with myself, with how easily this comes to me, with how much of this shit I remember, crystal clear and vibrant. There'd been a reason I hadn't practiced. I'd been telling myself that I wasn't anything like my dad, that if I needed a car, I'd just buy one. Now look at me. I'm not Eddie, not here in the cab of this about-to-be-stolen truck. I'm Junior, the kid wearing Al Munson's crooked smile. And Junior's got a job to do. I stripped the starter wires. Now all you have to do is connect them and rev the engine a few times. Whispers that helpful memory. But this time I can hear shades of my own voice laid over Dad's. My stomach twists again, but I'm about to follow through. When something creaks, the hair on my arms stand on end. I glance eye to the rearview mirror and see the door's open, not a ton, just enough to let a crack of sunlight inside. The weight of the warehouse door must have shifted the brick.
Forget the door. You want your friends to find out what we're up to?
I'm already swinging my legs out of the truck.
I'll be right back.
He doesn't say anything. He just looks at me, serious and disappointed as I jump to the concrete floor. I try not to feel like a coward, keeping my spine straight, trudging towards the warehouse door. But we both know this is a retreat. You signed up for this, I think, in a voice that sounds a lot like Dad's. You made the plan. You convinced the dealer. Why are you running now? I don't have an answer. Not a solid one. It's something about you're going to need a set of wheels. Something about I don't work with guys who don't pull their weight. And the sense that the road that runs through this job actually keeps on going once we're on the other side, if I want to keep driving. Something about the feeling, after I stripped the ignition, that it wouldn't just be Dad's smile I saw the next time I looked in the mirror. It would be his whole damn face. All that bullshit, apparently, is enough to tick my fight or flight switch firmly over to flight. So, yeah, I retreat. I retreat toward the only slice of sunshine in this hellhole of an automotive graveyard. It takes my eyes a second to adjust to the light as I peer through the crack in the door. In my narrow scope of vision, I can see that the brick has shifted more than I thought, because I can't see it anymore. It's moved so much that it's flat, outgone. Frowning, I edge the door open a bit more, just enough so that I'll be able to grab the brick, wherever it's scraped off to, and drag it back, and stop short. Because what I find is not a wayward doorstop. It's a gun, and it's pointed between my eyes.
You were right, Sammy.
Says a voice from the other end of the gun.
Looks like we got a rat.